the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets at Rob and another Mets Talk Live right here on the channel. Hopefully everybody is doing okay, and we are coming off a Mets victory on the West Coast in San Diego, 8-3. New York Mets played extremely well yesterday, minus Brazaban, but everybody else was absolutely great yesterday. Everything worked out. The bullpen was good, minus Brazaban. Severino had a solid outing, not a great outing, but solid outing. And Mark Vientos, once again, proven that he deserves to be on this team, how good he has been all season. He's been one of the most clutch players on this team. And the New York Mets remain a game and a half out of a wild card spot as the Braves beat the Phillies once again. And now it is time for the New York Mets to take control over their own destiny, right? It's obviously not all in their hands when it comes to the New York Mets making the playoffs, but the playoff race is here. We got 34 games to go, including tonight. Braves face the Nationals. The Mets obviously have 3 more games in San Diego. The New York Mets, for some reason, they play well against better teams. When it comes down to the bottom dwellers of this league, they've had issues. Why is that? I don't know. They've always had that. And this year, they've played extremely well against good pitching and good teams. I mean, what happened yesterday was just very interesting, right? It was a close game. All of a sudden, the Mets put up, a crooked number, gave an absolutely extra insurance runs that were needed. Obviously, what happened in the bottom of the night with Brazaban, but it just shows you that this team can do some special things when the lineup is doing what they're supposed to do. This lineup was supposed to be carrying this team the whole season, right? The starting pitching was usually it should have been the biggest question mark. It kind of is not the biggest question mark. It's probably their most successful out of all 3 areas of the team, right? You would say the offense is probably number 2. The bullpen was still is the biggest concern. The lineup was supposed to be the driving force of this team. Now, you got a couple of guys that have been playing extremely well. Francisco Lindor has been just Mr. Consistent. He was hot for a couple of months, and now he's just Mr. Consistent, getting his 2 hits a game, getting on base. I love Vientos in the 2 spot. Another great move by Carlos Mendoza, right? People like to kill Mendoza for certain bullpen moves. He hasn't been great in the bullpen moves, but could we be honest here? How many times did he have no options in the bullpen in regards to who to put in there, right? The Mets do get Daniel Nunez back as he's been activated, and Brazaban, the aforementioned Brazaban, has been sent down. And this is another reason why David Stern should be trusted by Met fans. This is the guy he brought in a trade not only a couple of weeks ago. Brazaban had options, and he's sent him down because he wasn't doing the job. Braziban was pitching well for the Marlins, right? He's lost the plate. He can't throw strikes. Hopefully sending him down because Braziban should be a big piece of this bullpen going forward towards the end of the year, hopefully into the playoffs. So Braziban's going to be back up here. He's got to fix location. He's got the stuff. Again, he wasn't a huge walk guy with the Marlins. He was one of their late inning guys. Braziban, I think, just needs to find that location, let him figure things out below while he has options, let him figure it out. And then when he figures it out, it could be just, maybe the Mets might have seen something that was a little worrisome in his delivery. Maybe he's tipping pitches. Obviously, the new pitching lab that the Mets have, all the analytics that they have with these pitchers now, they've figured out a lot of these guys, like a guy like Phil Maton, right? I think he had the biggest outing yesterday when he was brought in to the biggest spot in the game, in my opinion, when he was coming up at the heart of the order and the game was still close. And Phil Maton, and that's another reason why Stearns deserves a lot of credit. So we shall definitely see what the Mets are going to continue to do with this bullpen, especially as they get healthy in this bullpen, right? Nunez is a huge addition. We all know why. He's been our best bullpen arm. He's a guy that can go multiple innings. He can pitch multiple days. Him and Buto that can go multiple innings on different days is huge for this team. So having Buto back, having Nunez back, and then you have Stanek, you got Maton, you got Diaz, you got Folt, you got a lot of these guys that we didn't have a week ago. And putting it all together is just going to help this bullpen a little bit more. And yesterday was a prime example of why this Mets team can go on a run. It has nothing to do with beating the Orioles 2 out of 3. It just shows you that they step up against big teams. And as hot as the Padres are, I don't know why anybody acts like the Padres won something over these last couple of years when they've been trading the farm, when they've been spending a ton of money. This team has historically choked, and yet nobody talks about it. You listen to MLB Network, you listen to some fans on X. It seems like the Padres are the late 90s Yankees, the way people talk about the Padres. The Padres have been basically bad the entire year except for 1 month. They've had one really extremely good month that turned their success around when, if you go back a month ago, they were 2.5 games out of a wild card spot, and they're leading of the first wild card now. So the Padres have to prove to themselves that they can do and go deep into a playoff or make the playoffs, right? This is a team that has underperformed for years now. So, we got to stop acting like the Padres are this team of destiny and this team that has been constantly winning when they constantly have choked. And we see this is a team that you notice when things aren't going well, like yesterday, how frustrating they were getting on the field, right? They got a little bit used to winning a little bit more, right? They got a little bit of taste of success over the last month and a half. And everybody keeps on saying, oh, look at the Padres. Oh, this team's unbeatable. How are they unbeatable? Right? Look, not a lot of teams can compete with the roster. But the last time I checked, you don't play the game on paper. You play it on the field. And I'm sorry, the Mets lineup is deeper than a lot of lineups in baseball. Now, I think the Padres, you can look on paper and probably consider them probably a better lineup than the Mets. But, I mean, look at the bottom of the order for the Padres, right? I would take the Mets bottom over the Padres bottom. So, everybody loves to complain about the Mets. Oh, they're chokers, they're this, they're that, right? Yeah, they are. But they actually, they've been consistently good over the last 3.5 months, right? Have they struggled since the All-Star break? Can you call it a struggle? Because they've still been playing, right? The key is to play 500 baseball when you are 4, 5, 6 games over 500. Obviously, you want to be better than that. But if you remain 500 status after the All-Star break, you kind of keep on that status quo, which they are. They've been 5 games, 4 games, 7 games, 6 games over 500, back and around that range, and it hasn't hurt them as much as people actually think. Just because the Padres and the Diamondbacks had a month and a half, and this is another thing, right? The Arizona Diamondbacks, I think they're more talented. I think they're more scary than the Padres because they actually proved that they can take a run into the playoffs and get to a World Series. But even the Arizona Diamondbacks have played terrible, not really good for the majority of the season. We only look at, it's a recency bias. The Padres and the Diamondbacks have played a month and a half of great baseball, right? They're not gonna completely stay hot the entire time. You already see a little bit of cracks in their foundation. So these are teams that are beatable. So they're not. Are they dangerous? Absolutely. With the talent they have on the roster, of course, dangerous. But why are we not talking about the Mets being a team that could be dangerous? Is it because they don't have a quote-unquote ace? Okay, probably. But I don't recall how many times teams that have aces, and the way the playoffs go now and the way baseball is now, right? It's more about having a bullpen that can be trusted more than an ace that can pitch twice in a series, maybe 3 times in a series. Because I still see Severino as a guy that has the stuff of an ace. I'm not going to consider him an ace. I'm not a guy that's going to go on the limb here and say, oh, Severino is an ace, but he has the stuff to be an ace. When he's on and that slider is working and that sinker's working, he's almost untouchable, right? He's got to limit his walks. He's got to, sometimes he loses his location a little bit, and that's when he gets into trouble. Like yesterday, he got into trouble a little bit, but it was the pitch count that was worrisome. And obviously the Mets don't want to extend him as much because of the innings that he's already put on this year that he hasn't pitched since 2018. So, yeah, and Stanley, I agree with Dylan Cease, right? The Mets have Dylan Cease's number, right? And that's the other thing too, right? I go back into that 2022 series. I know it's somewhat of a different team with the Padres, but somewhat of a, they have different players, and the Mets obviously have different players. But the Mets were spiraling out of control after that Braves series, right? After they lost the division, it felt like all the air was out of the balloon with that team. So I don't care if you could have thrown, the Chicago White Sox of the 2024 Chicago White Sox against the Mets in that playoffs wildcard series, and the Mets probably would have lost. Like, that's how much that sucked the air out of the balloon of the 2022 New York Mets, right? I don't see this team having that issue. Now, am I going to say here, oh, they're going to make the playoffs? I'm not going to say yes or no. But they've been consistent enough where they haven't gone on extended losing streaks. I've said that over and over again. This is the team that, if they can avoid extended losing streaks over these last 50 to 60 games, they're primed to have 85, 86 wins. And that should be at least close enough, if not enough, to get that third wildcard spot. They might even do better. Again, there's 34 games left. If they go 12-12, right? Oh, I'm sorry. I can't even do the math. Give me 1 second, guys. See, that's how stupid I am because I don't do math very well. All right. So 17-17, right? So if you do 17, right? 17 plus 67, that is 84 wins. That's just going 500 over the next 34 games, right? Over the next 34 games, if they go 500, that's 84 wins, right? Is that going to be enough? Again, who knows, right? It depends on what the Braves do because this is coming down to the Braves and the Mets, right? I think San Francisco, right? The Mets have a 3.5 game, 2.5 game lead on the Giants, right? I think that unless the Mets go on a 4 or 5 game losing streak and the Giants go on a 4 or 5 game winning streak, which obviously is possible, But it seems like the race is between the Giants, the Mets, and the Braves at this moment. And don't count out Arizona and San Diego with the Mets catching them because they played them. I always say this: when you're facing a team that's in front of you, you win a ball game. It's like 2 games. It's 1 in the win, 1 in the loss column. Again, the Mets are 3 behind the Diamondbacks. I'm sorry. About 3.5. Behind, four behind the Diamondbacks and 4.5 from the San Diego Padres. If the Mets have a good week here on the West Coast, say if they win 3 out of 4 against San Diego, take 2 out of 3 against Arizona, and then go to Chicago against a bad White Sox team, which I will be going to next week. So I'm wearing the 7-line shirt going deep in Chicago. I wore this as I got it yesterday. So I'll be there with the 7-line in Chicago on the south side over the weekend next week. So the impossible can happen, right? The Mets, not right. We keep on forgetting that the Padres, the Diamondbacks, and the Mets all came from the dead. Remember, the Atlanta was number 1 for how long in the first wild card, and they slowly have backtracked. The Mets, the Diamondbacks, and the Padres have excelled. So, and with the Braves injuries, I know the Braves won 2 out of 3 against the Phillies, but again, does anybody trust the Phillies either? Like, I'm not saying the Mets are catching the Phillies or the Braves catching the Phillies, but, the way the Phillies are playing, if they don't get good starting pitching, it seems like they don't win. Because their offense scores in burst, right? If they don't score a lot, they usually don't win, right? The low-scoring games against the Braves benefited the Braves in this series. So, what is interesting when it comes to these last 34 games, the Mets go 500, that's 84 wins. Anything better than that, you're talking about 85, 86, 87. Does anybody think that the Mets can go and play 3 games over 500? What if they're 20-14? Right? That's 87 wins right there. What if they're a little bit better? What if they play 5 games over 500? Well, that's 89 wins. Now you're talking about 90. Now, again, the Mets, I was looking at the schedule. I know the Braves have somewhat of an easy schedule, but again, I don't think schedules matter. The Braves are a team that, they got injuries. They're a team that, they'll beat the Phillies 2 out of 3. Would anybody be shocked if they lose 2 out of 3 against the Nationals? It's possible, right? Coming to the end of August, obviously you got San Diego for next 3, Arizona and Chicago to end August into September. And then the Mets come home against the Red Sox, who are fighting for a wild card, and the plummeting Cincinnati Reds. And then they go on the road to Toronto and Philadelphia. So it's really possible. The Mets have a chance here with Cincinnati, Toronto, and the White Sox, teams that are not very good. They struggled against those teams, but this is when the team needs to step up. And we'll see if they can do that, because I'm not worried about them facing good teams, because the Mets, ever since the middle of May, have played outstanding against really good teams. They just have an extra pep in their step against good teams. I'd love for them to do that against bad teams, and they might sweep a series against a bad team. But this is what they've been doing against good teams. They've been playing well against good pitching. Even if they're not hitting the good pitching in that game, they find a way to hit their bullpen and win ball games, right? Going into the Baltimore series, people thought the Mets had no shot in that Baltimore series. Yes, it took 2 walk-offs, but who cares how you win? So, Ken, nobody asked you to be here. Sorry. And this is why Ken gets blocked, right? Well, Ken, I mean, you can do this, but nobody tells you to be here, right? I unblocked you because you were emailing me. So you're here. You don't have to listen. You don't have to be here. I tell that to everybody. Nobody has to be here if they don't want to be here, right? There's an X button. So make sure when you come on here, start your own YouTube channel. Maybe somebody will listen to you. Probably not, but that's okay. But when you're doing a solo show, You're going to repeat yourself a lot. Listen to talk radio. They repeat themselves all the time. So if you don't like it, you can go. It's okay. I won't feel disappointed. I won't feel hurt. I promise you that. So the Mets obviously got a game tonight. You got Paul Blackburn on the mound against greasy ear Joe Musgrove. Blackburn has pitched pretty well for the Mets since being traded from the Oakland A's. I would say, what he had, 3-4 starts? Probably 3 out of the 4 pretty good. Right? He's a guy that will give you, hey, I say it right again, Ken, don't forget. He'll give you a quality start. Right? The Padres offense is dangerous, but they also leave a lot of men on base. We've seen that yesterday. They left a lot of men left on base. So what does Blackburn got to do? Keep the Mets in the ball game. We absolutely, right, Ken? We absolutely have to think about, as Met fans, the starters in today's day and age, majority of the starting pitching in baseball, including the Mets. Keep your team in the ball game. When the starter leaves the game, keep the game close, tied, or ahead. Right? Don't let it get out of hand. If the starter leaves the game and your team has an opportunity to win a ball game, and I'm not saying be down by 3+ runs, but if they're down by 2 or 1 or tied or ahead and the starter's leaving, we look at the stat line, oh, he was terrible. Well, was he? Because he left the game with the team having a chance. I'm just checking the comments. Well, Junior, yeah, absolutely. Alvy's got to wake up. Alonso's got to wake up again, right? These are the 2 guys that really need to get going here, right? I talked about, Ken, I know you love that word, and I'm going to keep saying it. And now it's actually being very, very impacted towards you, right? Directly towards you. So I said this before. Pete Alonso and Alvarez, they should have combined for just history, like Alvarez last year, around, I would say, close to 60, 65 home runs combined. They're not going to do that, obviously. But with 34 games to go, you can change a lot of minds here, right? A lot of Met fans have turned against Pete Alonso. Finally, it took you long enough, right? Alvarez, look, second real year here. Sophomore slump. Maybe it's a lot to do with his thumb. That has been an issue. We all know about the thumb. He missed a lot of time because of it. Is it that? Probably. But it could be the league figuring him out a little bit. And to remain a major leaguer, just ask Brett Beatty, when teams start figuring you out and pitching you differently, guess what? You got to adjust. That's how you stay in the major leagues. That's how players who come up and figure out the adjustments become Major League Baseball players and stay in the majors and not a quadruple A player like Brett Beatty. Brett Beatty, we know, can hit triple A pitching. What does he have? 16 home runs since he's been sent down, batting like 380. But he bats 200 and hits ground balls all the time in the majors. So Alvarez, can it be a little bit of a sophomore slump? Could it be the thumb? Could be a combination of both. Pete Alonso, is he having a solid year? Yeah. I mean, considering, but if I'm going to go on his career stats, it's a down year. The guy's probably not going to have 100 RBIs. Definitely, most likely not going to hit 40 home runs. The average is, where it should be, maybe a little bit better, I'd like, but we never had that hot streak where Pete Alonso would go on a 2-3 week hot streak where you can't get him out. He hasn't had that this season. Every year of Pete Alonso's career, even the down year of 2021, if you want to consider that a down year. But that was, besides this year, 2021 was his down seasons of his career. He still had hot streaks and carried a team. He hasn't had it this year. It would be great over the next 2 weeks. He just goes crazy, but I've been saying that since game 60. So I don't think because the Mets have won despite Alvarez being extremely hot and despite Pete Alonso carrying the team for a couple of weeks. Lindor has been Mr. Consistent. Nimmo's starting to hit a little bit more. JD Martinez has been hitting home runs, bigger home runs. Vientos has been excellent, and again, I love him in that 2-hole. I don't care what you do at 3, 4, 5 anymore. I don't care if it's a combination of Nimmo and Alonso and Martinez. It doesn't matter to me. 1 and 2 should be Lindor and Vientos. Lindor just consistently gets on base, and Vientos hits the ball harder than almost anybody on this team. His hard hit rate, even when he's going bad, he hits the ball hard more often than not. And I'd rather have a guy that is batting 280 in the 2-hole. I'm still a little old school. I like the number 2 hitter to have a good average, because if you can get your leadoff man on, like Lindor has been doing, you got an average guy in your number 2-hole and a guy like Vientos who's showing he has a tremendous amount of power and is batting 280. That's a great combination. The guy can hit you over the wall, but he also can hit the ball hard in the gap. He can also, get that base hit, get Lindor first to third. Or if he's on second, like yesterday, back-to-back hits, back-to-back doubles, gives you a 1-0 lead in the first inning. The Mets haven't done that enough. They haven't gone out into leads early and give their starting pitcher a little bit of run support. If you watch Met baseball, which I know a lot of you have, the Mets seem like their starter is always either pitching from behind or they're putting up zeros and the Mets aren't scoring anything. So the Mets starting pitching has to be perfect. And then when they start giving up a couple of runs, automatically they're blaming the pitching when the offense needs to start putting up a couple of crooked numbers while your pitcher's putting up zeros. I love being on the road because you come up first. You get to set the tone right away. And that's what the Mets did yesterday. The Padres were always chasing us the entire game. And this is the team. I said this going back when the Mets swept the Padres at home. And oh, by the way, they're 4-0 against the Padres. So the Mets already won the season series. So the good news is, if the Mets somehow find their way in near the Padres once again, they have a tiebreaker. That's great. That's great news. But the Mets got to do this. What they consistently got to do is score runs early. Give run support to your starters. You pitch better that way. Get a little room for comfort. You're not worried about making every pitch perfect. And, if you got a couple of run lead, you're not worried about throwing a fastball over the middle if there's nobody on with the batter up and a guy takes you deep. It's only 1 run. You still got a lead. The Padres, on the other hand, I was looking, of course, they had a good amount of comebacks over their hot streak. But what does that comeback tell you late in ball games? That they were down in ball games. They've been consistently down, right? Comebacks are nice, but it kind of, when you come back and win ball games, it kind of puts the blindfold on you a little bit of what happened during those games. They were losing those games. They were losing late in those ball games. Look, a win's a win, as I said. But when you're facing a team that is consistently down in games, sooner or later, those comeback wins are going to slow down. It's baseball. You're not going to consistently come back all the time and continue to win. You might fight your way back, but you're not going to win those ball games. I think the Padres have been, tippy-toeing on that line where if you're going to continue to be behind in ball games, eventually you're not going to come back. And I think that's starting to swing a little bit with the Padres. And you seen it yesterday, right? When you throw a little bit good pitching at them and you throw, a little bit better bullpen and you shut them down, look what happens. You win 8-3, right? Braziban couldn't throw strikes. He was basically handing a couple of runs to the Padres yesterday. But other than that, everybody pitched well. Young. I think Maton had the biggest outing of the game in the big spot. Game was so close, middle of the order. Did the job. So the Mets have an opportunity here, not only to gain games on the Padres, but the Braves as well. Yes, Edgardo, I know the Braves play the Nationals, but again, doesn't mean that the Braves are going to win here. Can they? Of course they can. But the Mets got to take care of their business before they worry about the Braves. The Mets can't affect the Braves on the field unless they're playing them. All the Mets can do is handle their business and let the rest of it take care of itself. And again, you're playing a team that's in front of you. Keep on winning, and you'll be right there. Get closer, right? You got to remember the Padres played. I believe they played about 3 or 4 more games than the Mets at this point. So the Mets have a couple of games in hand as well, and they're only three in the loss column. I'm sorry, let's see, 5 in the loss column, right there, 5 games from the Padres. So it's 5 games from the Padres. They win 3 out of 4. You gain a couple of games on the Padres. Who knows what Arizona's going to do, and we'll see what the Braves do, right? A game and a half can change just like that, as we've seen many times, as this back and forth has been going on for a couple of weeks now. The New York Mets have a great opportunity here to take care of their own business. And again, 34 games left to go, including tonight. You go 500, that's 84 wins. Not so bad. 84 wins. A couple of games over, you're 85, 86, 87 games. And now we're talking about a situation. Remember, the Braves also have to play well, right? If they go 500 and the Mets go 500, obviously the Braves are going to win the wild card. So if the Braves play 500 and the Mets play 2 games over 500, guess who wins by a half game? The New York Mets, right? Simple math. All right, guys, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to check the comments. Easy year. Garrett is still a little shaky. But again, what are we expecting from Reed Garrett? Right? Reed Garrett is Reed Garrett. He had like a month of great performance, but usually these guys turn back to what they are. Right? With Nunez coming back, with Budo here, with Stanek and Maton and Diaz and Young. Mendoza still kind of trusts Garrett a little bit, but I think that's slowly going to go away. Again, would you see Garrett coming in if the starter only goes in the 5th inning, 5 innings? Yeah, sure. I don't see Garrett going to continue to get late inning starts unless, Nunez. Now, you got to be careful with Nunez. Just because Nunez comes back doesn't mean you just throw him to the wolves and pitch him 2 innings, every other day. You also don't want to get him hurt again. So they're going to take it easy with him for at least a couple of outings with Nunez. Instead of, if he pitches 2 innings, say today, he might not pitch again until the Arizona series. So you got to be careful with him. You don't want to get these guys hurt once again. Brad, how much of Vientos' success is because he's not the DH? Well, we really haven't seen him as the DH. I don't think it has anything to do with it. I think he's just a pure hitter. I don't think playing every day on the field is gonna really matter if he was a DH or not. We haven't really seen him as a DH, much at all consistently. He's done it, a couple of times, but not enough. I just think Vientos is a guy that is just a pure hitter. The biggest concern for Vientos was, can he be good enough defensively to warrant being in the lineup every day? It wasn't his bat. I think the Mets thought his bat would be fine. Not this good, but fine. I think they were concerned about him being a defensive liability at third base, especially with a pitching staff that is a ground ball pitching staff. So why not? He got an opportunity. Brett Beatty wasn't doing the job. The Mets had Vientos ready to go, and Vientos won the job. I have no problem with that. If a guy is not doing the job, replace him with the next man up. And if he does the job, well, too bad for the other guy. Vientos, I think, shocked everybody. Nobody thought he was going to be this good all around. Now, he has a couple of hiccups defensively every now and then. His first step is not as quick as it should be off the bat, but maybe that'll be time. He's still young. Maybe it'll take time to, at the hot corner. We'll see. But he won the job, and good for him. 20 home runs, or a little over 280. He's been a tremendous bright spot for this team. And look, we needed him. With Alvarez, offensive numbers plummeted from last year. Pete Alonso, not the same power numbers, not the same RBIs. We needed Vientos to step up. So he's done an excellent job. I don't think it has a lot more to do with the DH. I just think he's just a pure hitter, right? He's the guy that figured out Major League pitching. Good for him. Brett Baty hasn't. I still think Brett Baty's going to be called up in September, though. I have a feeling the Mets are going to do that. He's been killing it in AAA. I know. He always hits in AAA. But I'd give him one more opportunity. Bring him up in September. There's no reason why you can't, play. He's been playing a lot of second base. With Iglesias and McNeil, where's that playing time coming? Well, you could switch it around a little bit. You know what? When you give Martinez a day off, put Alonso as DH. Move Vientos to first. You could put Baty to third. You could put Iglesias second. You could do a lot of things, right? You could put McNeil into the outfield one day. So these guys can get playing time. Why not? Don't leave that bat. Sometimes I think it's just confidence with Brett Baty sometimes. I mean, it could be just he just can't hit Major League pitching. But I think that this September call-up is probably going to be Brett Baty. And the way he's been hitting, why not? Give him that one last chance. He might surprise you. He might be a little bit of that lightning in a bottle in the last month of the season. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but why not? Yeah, Lindor, I don't think we really did consistently see him enough at the DH level, because he was in and out of the lineup a lot. It was DH, then he sat down, then it was DH, sat down, back and forth. So I don't want to judge last year because last year was just a shit show all around. It's hard to judge those players based on all the nonsense that was going on in that clubhouse. And after the trade deadline, it was kind of like every man for themselves. So I don't want to look just at that year and say, oh, well, he didn't do well at the DH level or didn't do enough at the DH level. We know he has power, but the average is really surprising, which is excellent. Look, I'm an average guy. I don't care what anybody says. I know a lot of people that I did work with on YouTube, love to not talk about average, and average is going by the wayside. Average is still an important stat. I don't care what anybody says. When your average is low, you don't put the bat on the ball enough. That's just me. You don't put the ball in play enough, in my opinion. You either strike out a lot and maybe hit a lot of home runs. Average is still important to me. So I love that his average is 280. And again, Mendoza putting him in the 2-hole makes so much sense. Who puts the bat on the ball more than Mark Vientos? He's batting over 280. Why not? Perfect spot for him. And he can take you over the wall. That's what I like about Mark Vientos is the average. The power, we knew he had power. But he batted, 220 last year? Batting at 280 tells me he's becoming a better hitter. Not just power. And I love that about him. I mean, this guy, if he has a tremendous month, could be he can hit 30 home runs. That would be awesome. And if you bet 280 or so, anything over 270, I like you as a pure hitter, not just power. I'm sick and tired of all these analytical people saying power is the only thing that matters, because it really doesn't. It really doesn't. How many times do you need that sac fly? You need that base hit to get that runner home from third. Because too many times the guy that's trying to hit home runs is probably going to strike out in those spots. Situational hitting is extremely important in today's game where they're constantly switching pitchers basically every inning. After like the 5th inning, it's like a merry-go-round of new pitchers. Put the bat on the ball and make the defense make plays. Too many times. You've seen it already. You've seen it with the Mets. with their defense, right? The batters put the ball in play. The Mets are throwing the ball around. Same thing with other teams. Mets put the ball in play. The defense doesn't turn a double play. You saw it against Baltimore. Gave us a run. Make the defense make the play. Because, yes, more often than not, they will, but that one or two times, they might make a mistake, and it might cost them and benefit the New York Mets. Yeah, bunting is a lost art. The problem with me when it comes to bunting is that they don't practice it anymore. So I don't like it if they're not practicing it anymore. Like, you're in the batting cages. Just because you're a power hitter doesn't mean you got to hit 20 batting practice balls over the fence to put on a show. Right? Take the ball the other way in batting practice. You see with certain hitters, if you're ever at a game, you get to watch batting practice, pay attention to the guys that actually have good averages, or at least serviceable averages. I would say 250 and above. What they do in the cage. When the guys that have like 210 averages, they'll hit about 15 of the 20 balls over the fence. What does that tell me? Is that all they're caring about is the power. But what about hitting that ball the other way to get that guy over that's on first to third? When a guy's on third, less than 2 outs, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get the ball to the outfield. Like, it's a simple game. Yes, it's a hard game, but it's also a simple game. They overcomplicate it with all these stupid stats. That baseball has changed with velocity, pitchers throwing harder, hitters hitting the ball further. And now that's everybody what cares about, because everybody wants to throw the ball hard for as long as they can, and yet they're 5-inning pitchers. And then they tell you got to hit the ball over the wall to be successful. But that's not true. Is it important? Of course it is. But can anybody tell me that Pete Alonso's power has meant a lot to this Mets team, specifically this year and most of his career? He's hit a lot of bullshit home runs. Specifically this year, the guy can't hit home runs with men on. The majority of his home runs have come with nobody on base. And has he had a couple of moments? Absolutely. But you can't have one moment a week and let me tell you that, look how well you're doing. No. So the New York Mets and the Padres play a game today, right? Or tonight. In about a little more than an hour. Paul Blackburn, Joe Musgrove, greasy ear Joe Musgrove. We know Joe Musgrove had pitched well against the Mets in his time with the Padres. The Mets got to do exactly what they did yesterday. Dylan Cease is a guy that if he figures it out early and you can't get to him early, you're going to have a rough day. The Mets got to him early. They were taking pitches. They were working counts, frustrating Dylan Cease, and then he started to leave the ball over the plate. And then the Mets took care of business later in the ball game. They got him out of the game when they needed to get him out of the game. They got to him when they needed to get to him, and the Mets pitching took care of business. Blackburn, he's not going to overpower you. He's going to keep you in the ball game. And that's what I'm looking for a guy who's a fifth starter. Keep your team in the ball game and let your offense pick up the slack. David Peterson probably has been our most consistent pitcher and probably the most trustworthy pitcher over the last couple of weeks. Even Sean Manaea had a couple of hiccups. But David Peterson seems like he's figured it out. He had one hiccup, but for the most part, he's been pretty damn good. The start that I'm worried about is Jose Quintana. What are we getting from him? He's a guy that might be, I wouldn't say out of this rotation, but might be an afterthought. If the Mets make the wild card round, he might not even pitch in any of those games. I mean, I would go with Severino, Peterson, and Manaea because they've pitched well. And Blackburn could be that, that guy that might come in if one of the pitchers in that wild card series doesn't get the job done early and you got to, kind of save the game a little bit. And Blackburn could be that first man out of the bullpen type of situation. If a starter doesn't have it that in that wild card game, Jose Quintana might be a guy that might be just in the bullpen for one batter. It's a possibility. Yeah, I was waiting for the lineup to pop up. Give me one. I know it popped up. I haven't checked it. And this isn't the pregame, so I didn't have the lineup up there. So let me just see. So the lineup today is Lindor, Vientos, Martinez, Alonso, Marte, Iglesias, McNeil, Alvarez, and Bader. So no Nimmo today. Marte's playing right field. McNeil's playing left. Bader's playing center. Anything else? That's it. So no Nimmo today. Again, they're trying to keep Nimmo, after his MRI, a little bit worried about his injury. Give him a day. No problem with that. You're not really losing much. Look, Marte is just a pure hitter. He's back in the lineup. McNeil can play left field, right field, doesn't matter. And Bader is, just a Gold Glove guy in center field. I like the lineup today. I love Vientos second, as I said before. Lindor has been a staple in the leadoff spot. Basically, you can probably, ink in 2 hits for this guy. Who knows? He might even hit a home run. Like, he's just a guy that gets on base. Martinez has been a little bit better. He's batting third. Alonso, man, I love for Alonso to just get it going. I mean, when Lindor has a better OPS than you, it's a problem. Jose Iglesias has a better OPS than Pete Alonso. Like, that's a problem. And Padres lineup is Arise, Profar, Cronenworth, Machado, Bogarts, Merrill, Peralta, Higashioka, and McCoy. Again, very similar lineup except for Higashioka. Higashioka he killed the Mets. Seems like every time he plays against us. But Marte can hit. Let's go Nats, absolutely. Bader is 1 for 11 against Musgrove. Yeah, but I don't think this is more about Bader being in the lineup. Again, I don't care about matchups, right? Bader has been, a lot of that 1 for 11 was when he was probably in the National League with the Cardinals, or probably if you face him against when he was a Yankee. All right, Bader has been probably his best offensive player in his career this year. And he's been healthy, and he's been one of our most clutch guys in big spots. So I'm not going based on numbers here, right? You got to be careful with Nimmo. He is a guy that, obviously dodged a bullet with that diving catch and getting a clean MRI. Got to take it easy with him. He's probably a little bit sore. You don't want to mess up Brandon Nimmo over this last stretch of games. Give him the day off. I'm okay with Marte back in right field. Bader is Gold Glover in center field. And left field is Jeff McNeil, who takes care of business in left field. So I'm not too worried about that. Machado looked like Pete flailing away at the outfield. Yeah, well, Machado's that guy too, right? He's a guy that he has a long swing. If you're anywhere in the middle of the plate, a little bit outside, and anywhere inside, he'll just beat the hell out of you. And cause damage if you do. If you keep it just off the plate, or even worse, he's a guy that flails at a lot of pitches. He has a long swing. And if you throw a ball, now Blackburn ain't a guy that throws extremely hard, but if you throw the ball letter high, Machado is a guy that has a bit of more of a cut on his swing. You don't really get to those high fastballs as well. So hold on. Once is an outfielder, Musgrove. I don't understand that. I'm assuming Nemo's getting the day off because the Mets are just making sure he's okay. All right, guys. So we're gonna end the stream in just a few minutes. Again, guys, the Mets won 8-3 yesterday. Still a game and a half out of a wild card spot behind the Atlanta Braves. The Braves do face the Nationals. I believe they've started already, if I'm not mistaken. See what is going on in the world of the Nationals are winning 2-1 in the bottom of the 4th. So again, let's go Nationals. Mets got to take care of their own business. Blackburn on the mound, Musgrove on the mound for both teams. Mets lineup, no Nimmo in the lineup today. You got McNeil in left, Bader in center. Marte and Wright, Blackburn, keep this team in the ball game. Give us 5-6 quality innings. Less than 3 runs would be very, very nice to see. And the Mets offense got to do their job, right? The offense, this team's only going to go as far as their offense is going to take them. They scored 8 runs yesterday. Score more than 5 runs today, 5 or more. And I think the Mets have a pretty good chance of winning that ball game. So once again, guys, make sure you hit on that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. 9:30-ish start time for the game. Enjoy the game today. I know these West Coast games, if you're on the East Coast, is tough. It's a Friday night again. If you have off, congratulations. I don't, unfortunately, but hey, we got to pay our bills. So make sure you hit on that like button, guys. I know there's been a couple of people asking about the roundtable. Chris is on his world tour. He's out of the country right now. Again, no need to try to nitpick him and try to get him on the show when he's enjoying his, I think it's his last vacation of the summer before he gets back into the groove of things. So we're not going to bother to do a roundtable. Maybe me, Hayden, and Hector will get a guest on to fill in for Chris. We'll see about that. But hopefully, I would love to do a roundtable either right after the Padres series on Sunday, maybe a night show. That would be great. But if not, we'll definitely try to do some right after the West Coast trip, or at least the West Coast trip. I'll go in Arizona. Mets head to Chicago. I will be in Chicago on the south side for the White Sox series, going with the 7 line. Obviously, I'm wearing the shirt right now. Going deep in Chicago is the name of the outing and the shirt. So going to be a lot of fun. It's always a great time with the 7 line, especially away games is always a lot of fun. So if you're watching and you're going to the games in Chicago, say what's up, hang out, have a beer, and we'll have a lot of fun on the south side of Chicago against the White Sox. With that said, guys, the Mets are 67 and 61, not 51, excuse me. 67 and 61 on the season. Game and a half out of the wild card, 7.5 out of the division with 34 games to play. What will the Mets do? Will they prevail, get a wild card spot, choke, and not get the job done? We shall see. That's why they play the game. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Talk Live right here on Talking Mets with Rob. Everybody have a great day. Enjoy some late night baseball on the West Coast. Let's go Mets, and I'll see you next time, guys. Have a great night. Let's go Mets.